One day I made the decision to read the entire Bible cover to cover. It's possible I had been influenced by the gray aliens to do this. It becomes more evident as the story unfolds. I purchased a new Bible and leather jacket and noted the start and end date inside the front cover. It took me a span of 6 months to read from Genesis to Revelation. By reading the Bible, I have often wondered if I had inadvertently downloaded some sort of coding sealed within its pages. There is a book called The Bible Code that is worth looking at. During this period, I remember finding myself on a table while gray beings tended to my aura, purifying it by expelling darkened areas, leaving it as clear light. I had gained a level of awareness as they worked in the energy field of my right hip. I could actually see the darkness they focused on removing. I have come to realize that the bioengineered eyes of the Greys not only allow them to zoom in and out at incredible depths, but that they can also see our soul and energy fields. Since this is a matter of technology, maybe someday our physicians will have this same capability. That would be great. One early afternoon, while seated on my bed, 2 beings materialized before me. One of them presented me with a peculiar book, remarking that I couldn't perceive it with my physical eyes, but had to engage with it on a spiritual level, urging me to explore the contents and memorize it as best I could. Recalling a lesson from my elementary school days about enhancing memory through association, I applied this method. As I scrutinized each symbol within the book, I mentally linked them to familiar objects. In my mind, I can still see myself sitting near the edge of the bed, looking at the book, the elementary school and memories of my early years there behind me. The initial symbol I encountered resembled dumbbells, followed by what I interpreted as an umbrella, with a void underneath its hood. There was a line below the hood of the umbrella that I intuitively followed. My focus led me to 2 thick black bars connected to its base. I sensed a connection between the hooded umbrella and the line with 2 black bars that led from it. These 2 objects went together. Next, I focused on a symbol akin to a flag with 2, possibly 3 zigzags. I struggled to memorize the direction of zigzags. Did they start with a line going up or going down? At the time, there was a pesticide spray called Black Flag, so I made this connection to help me remember this symbol. In the upper right corner of this strange book, I focused on a symbol resembling a paw print, evoking imagery of a black bear's front paw. Next, I perceived what resembled a bicycle missing its handlebars, with the top circle representing the seat and the bottom circle signifying the wheels, albeit without pedals. Lower down, a small circle with 2 lines atop it caught my attention. Associating it with the larger bear paw symbol above, I dubbed it a smaller animal paw. Lastly, in the lower right corner was a machine. The machine was too complex for me to associate a shape other than a box. There was a chute on the back and a door on the front. It appeared operational, imbued with energy, yet its exact purpose remained elusive. It seemed to be running, and I felt that it was used to process something. Something was put through the front and came out the back chute. Because Roy's death continued to weigh on my mind, I speculated whether this machine served as a means of soul recycling. This was notion that predated my conscious awareness of these alien beings, suggesting a buried recognition of their activities. After taking in all the symbols on this one page, I started noticing a fluorescent blue seeping through from behind. This was a very strange book with unnatural properties. I did not have to physically turn a page. I just needed to take my mental focus there. Soon, a strikingly beautiful large triangle came into focus. At this time, I was either still a teenager or in my early 20s and did not associate this triangle with the Pyramid of Giza. Truthfully, I didn't know much about Egypt. This would still have been in the 1970s, at least 20 years before personal computers were popular. Subsequently, the 2 gray beings returned and took the book, probably just after I finished viewing. More than likely, they telepathically observed me the whole while, evaluating my progress. What seems like later that evening, the 2 gray aliens returned dressed in a long white robe and asked if I would go with them. One doesn't usually get the choice, so I was not going to go. One of them left as if he needed to go somewhere, while the other remained. A moment or so passed when the remaining alien said that the one who had left needed to talk to me about something. It seemed important. In hindsight, this was probably their plan B. Being curious, I wondered what could be so important that he needed to talk to me about. I can see now that this venture required my consent and free will. I really don't know if they took me physically or spiritually. My next recollection places me aboard a rather small spaceship, seated in a chair in a chamber that was no bigger than 4 feet in diameter. This ship was so small, it was void of everything but the bare necessities needed for this trip. If I had to guess, and I could be wrong, I wouldn't think it was more than 18 feet around. In this chamber, a hood was placed over my head, reminiscent of an executioner's apparatus. My body was physically strapped into place, and my arms were strapped to an armrest. With this apparatus on my head, a soothing vibration permeated my entire being. Its purpose was to override any physical sensation of discomfort and induce a state of serene well-being. Once all set, the rounded metal chamber door was closed and secured. I knew that the gray being was headed to the controls of this ship, which had a viewing dome through which they could see. We traversed at remarkable speeds, going a vast distance into the darkness of space. The terms are hyperspace travel, or warp speed, exceeding the speed of light. Even at these speeds, we were traveling for quite some time. I understood that there were significant risks, mainly to me and my survival. That is why I was placed in this chamber. Upon our arrival, the gray alien who had secured me there came to check on my well-being. He displayed genuine concern, gently calling out my name as he removed the device from my head. I was extremely reluctant to be roused from my induced tranquil state, but he insisted we proceed. Next, I come to realize that I am moving along a track, much like a small conveyor belt, but several hundred feet in the air. There was no risk of falling because my feet were somehow stuck in place. Behind me stood the 2 gray aliens, and it seems they had hoods over their heads. They were mentally silent and slightly apprehensive, as a formidable creature approached from the left on what seemed like another conveyor belt. He scrutinized me as he passed. He appeared to come to the conclusion that he rather liked me. Only upon meeting his approval were we free to resume our journey. Soon I glimpsed a mysterious city far below to my left. Oddly, it was devoid of signs of life or activity. There were bland single-story buildings along streets, looking more like a business area than a neighborhood. The area did not seem quite natural, as if the builder was making objects foreign to him. There were no trees, grass, cars, or people. I wondered where everyone had gone. Then I am distracted by something to my right. It is a fish, orange in color, flying in the air. It is about 3 to 4 feet long and rounded. It is moving like a fish, its body swishing, but it is floating in the air. It is curious and looking at me. Continuing to observe my surroundings, I looked down over my right shoulder and caught a glimpse of a pyramid with a head on top. This head projected sensuality, and I felt a subtle sexual draw. But then it changed from male to female. Not that it changed its appearance, but changed its sexuality. It was cycling continuously between being male, then female. When it was male, I felt comfortable being sensually attracted, but when it went female, I put the brakes on. This emotional seesawing disturbed me, so I decided I did not like this thing. Turning back to my left, the fish had already moved around behind me because he was now over the city and still curiously observing me. Almost too late, I noticed a magnificent, large dome building, now far over my left shoulder. The architecture was beautiful, and I strained to get a better look, but my stiff and anchored legs wouldn't let me. I was disappointed and blamed the fish for having distracted me. We kept moving on. Far up ahead toward the middle of this area, because we seemed to be inside somewhere, I saw rainbow colors of light coming off a huge cluster of crystals, which I hoped we might go toward, but instead, we moved off to the right. Sitting upon the tracks, still suspended in air, was a building. We passed through its opening, and inside were 2 more buildings, hollowed out with just walls and several open windows. There seemed to be a small patch of turf like grass beside the left building. Our track ran between these 2 hollow buildings. Creatures resembling monkeys with spindly arms continuously crawled all over and in and out of the windows. But they were hairless and looked like baby frogs with many eyes. They weren't anything I had seen before. How odd for these creatures to be out here in the middle of nowhere, I thought. Where do they live? Maybe they are like a zoo, and the people in the city come here to look at them. Maybe all the people in the city left to come here. But they are not here now, so where could all the people have gone? The monkey-like creatures observed me with intense interest, which was unsettling. I feared they would go berserk and jump on me. Very tense moments passed as we glided through. Then I became aware of standing in front of a huge bird creature. It was well over 10 feet tall. The two beings were standing behind and to the left of the bird, and all were facing me. I had the impression that the bird had grown from a collective force from people of Earth and was now complete. This bird began radiating heat toward me as if filling up every cell in my body. The burning sensation was becoming quite unbearable. I squeezed my eyes closed as I tried to tolerate the searing pain. The two beings were ready to intervene the second they thought I was unable to withstand it. For a second, one being started to step forward to stop the process, while the other prevented him. They were solemn and seemed concerned. When the burning subsided and I was able to look again, I saw a small pile of gray material at my feet. I had no clue as to what it was, or where it had even come from, and I did not connect it with the bird. I just wanted to move on. From the beings, I felt used in some way, but sensed that this was a very personal experience. I knew that the bird would somehow grow again from good deeds, like a cycle repeating itself. Next, I am standing off to myself in what seemed to be a large, dim room. The room appeared to be physical enough, and there were doorways without doors. I get the sense we are suspended in space. To my right, and just a tad back, I heard a booming voice say, "Do you understand?" I did not understand, not even the reference for the question. When I thought to turn and look in that direction, I was not allowed. Then it said, "I love you," and began emanating an immense sadness that can only be described as the deep sorrow of unrequited love. We wept together in this mutually intense emotional encounter for quite some time. We were ready to leave, and I dreaded having to pass those crawly, monkey-like creatures again. We didn't pass by the zoo again, but continued traveling in the same direction, making a circle. I've considered the possibility that the many-eyed creatures served as the seers of the voice professing love toward me. Perhaps through their numerous eyes, they enabled him to perceive me. However, the exact nature of their role remains uncertain. Over 2 decades have passed, and I've pondered this series of events extensively. What purpose did the enigmatic symbols in the peculiar book serve? While my conclusion remains tentative, I speculate that it could be a map, a celestial map, intended to guide me back in the event of unforeseen circumstances. The celestial map started with the farthest region of space and ended with the pyramid on Earth. It would be like hitting the home button on your phone's GPS app. The first I noticed was the dumbbell symbol in the far upper left. I turned to ChatGPT-3 for interpretation and got this response. In physics, a dumbbell is a term used to describe a simple mechanical system consisting of 2 masses connected by a rod. This system is often used as an example in physics problems to demonstrate concepts such as rotational motion and torque. In a spiritual or metaphysical context, it's possible to interpret it in various ways. For example, one could perceive the 2 masses connected by a central rod as representing dualities or opposing forces in the universe, with the rod serving as a unifying element. Alternatively, the symmetry and balance of the dumbbell shape could symbolize harmony, equilibrium, or the interconnectedness of all things." End quote. In the context of this celestial map, the dumbbell symbol may represent the pivotal moment when the manifest universe emerged, brought forth by the essential process of duality. Genesis 1:3-5, "And God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day." The vacant space beneath the hood of the umbrella could represent a final interdimensional shift, and the energetic glowing blue pyramid could indicate the presence of a homing device, sending out a location signal like a GPS. The symbol I interpreted as being a bicycle without handlebars or pedals is a commonly reported alien symbol. In a later chapter, I will cover several alien symbols and their meanings. Regarding this bicycle-like symbol, I solicited ChatGPT with the question, "Give examples of a triangle-shaped asterism formed by connecting 3 stars." Here's what ChatGPT-3 had to say. "The summer triangle is not a single star system, but rather an asterism consisting of 3 bright stars from 3 different constellations." 1. Vega in the constellation Lyra. 2. Deneb in the constellation Cygnus. 3. Altair in the constellation Aquila. These stars appear to form a large triangle in the summer sky in the northern hemisphere and are among the brightest stars visible from Earth." End quote. This is significant in our theory of this being a celestial map. To learn more about the highly significant constellation of Cygnus, please see videos of Andrew Collins and his book, The Cygnus Key. I will leave a link in the description box below. I had the pleasure of meeting him at one of his conferences. The two bare paw prints would be Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. Now mind you, I knew nothing about astrology in my teens and 20s. The conclusion that this mysterious book has to be a celestial map came after 20 years of contemplation. Querying ChatGPT again, here is what it had to say. 1. Ursa Major, often referred to as the Great Bear, is one of the largest and most recognizable constellations. It contains the asterism known as the Big Dipper, or the Plough, which is shaped like a large ladle or saucepan. The stars of the Big Dipper form part of the larger Ursa Major constellation, which resembles a bear with a long tail. 2. Ursa Minor, also called the Little Bear or the Lesser Bear, contains the star Polaris, commonly known as the North Star or Pole Star. Polaris marks the end of the handle of the Little Dipper, which forms the body and tail of the bear. Ursa Minor is notable because Polaris sits very close to the North Celestial Pole, making it a helpful navigational aid for finding direction at night. These two constellations have been recognized and named since ancient times and have significant cultural and navigational importance." End quote. Again, paw-like symbols are significant in our theory of this being a celestial map, with Ursa Major meaning Big Bear, whose asterism is known as the Big Dipper or Plough, and Ursa Minor meaning Little Bear, whose asterism contains the all-important North Star or Pole Star. Regarding the phoenix bird, I had an intuitive sense that its vitality stemmed from the collective good deeds of humanity. It seemed to thrive on these benevolent acts, growing until it reached a point where its accumulated essence was passed on to another individual, initiating a new cycle. This notion resonates with the principle of energy conservation in physics, which asserts that energy cannot be created or destroyed, but only transformed into different forms. The phoenix's symbolic act of burning represents the transformative process that arises from overcoming challenges and adversity. It embodies themes of resilience, renewal, and personal growth. It is conceivable that countless individuals have contributed to this perpetual process throughout history. I believe that the fiery energy emanating from the phoenix bird helped to purge much of the accumulated dross and negative energy within me. Lastly, the identity of the entity with the resonant voice expressing love remains a mystery. Prior to encountering this being, I had undergone 2 energy clearing processes and passed through 2 checkpoints, one being the formidable entity crossing us on the conveyor belt, and the other being the monkey-like creatures. Based upon reports of near-death experiences and biblical descriptions, I doubt that it was the Almighty Creator. Nonetheless, considering its distant locale in deep space, requiring extensive warp speed travel and potential shifts in dimensions, it's conceivable that it resides at the outermost reaches of the universe. This notion is echoed by the symbol I interpreted as the hood of an umbrella, beneath which lay a void. According to the celestial map, assuming that is what the mysterious book was, this region marked the starting point for the journey back home, symbolized by the luminous blue pyramid. If the universe is expanding as scientists believe, then the individual I was brought before could have been the very first and oldest consciousness in the entire universe. The very thought is astounding. This concludes Chapter 26.